Hello, hello, hi everyone. Happy
Hello.
Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Hope we are all doing great. Happy Sunday, everyone. And it's another day.
Another beautiful Sunday.
Yes.
Welcome. Thanks for joining. If you have already, if you haven't, looking forward to see.
Yes. Great. Just the moment I'm about to share, my Facebook app is updating. That's okay. As soon as it's done, then I can share this. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We do appreciate you spending the time with us. Again, your girls, also Babes and Eyes here. And just like every other Sunday, we're here to talk about one or two things, anything that we have an opinion on. And we come up here to share with you to let you know how we think, give our perspective, and again expect to hear from you. Like, what do you think in regarding any of the things that we do bring up? So remember, it is an open platform. You're welcome to comment. You're welcome to let us know what you think, and let's see how that goes. Ice, any starting words before I introduce the topic?
Well, thank you for joining, and thanks everyone for always committing and commenting for the last well, every Sunday that we come on here. It's easy to just take things like that for granted, just to put a word of gratitude out there and say it's highly appreciated. Your time, your comments, and your contribution to this platform makes it it's like a motivation to us every Sunday. So when we come here and we meet you, we are excited, we are motivated, and we are inspired.
That is right. Thanks so much for explaining that. So today we want to talk about connecting with our children. And so connecting with our children is it's broad, it's on the broad side of the topic, but we are going to focus it down a little bit as we go on. And when we talk of connecting with our children, what do I mean by that? The idea is how can we make our relationship with our kids, um like, you want to be a parent, and at the same time, as I always say, you want to be a parent and try to be a friend so that they can open up to you and talk to you. And I'm sure that if you're listening, last week we talked about love and all of that, and this week we are switching gears a little bit. And as we said, one of the reasons of this show is we want to be able to come and talk to you about things that impact our lives, things that we experience every day. We want to come and share. And choosing to talk about connecting with our children today was inspired or motivated by some of the recent happenings around the world. About a couple of weeks ago, there was news all over the U.S. about a 14-year-old child who decided to take herself as a result of bullying. And that hit hard. That hit me really hard. And I reached out to Ice and I was like, hey, Ice, what about we talk about this? What about we come up here and we just have an open conversation while listening to you or checking out the comment section to see what you people think too. So the backstory, just a brief backstory about this kid is she was bullied at school, and somebody made a video of what was happening. So bullied, a group of people or a number of people beat her up, and another person recorded it. And as they recorded it, she went back home. A day later, she realized that she saw it on her phone. She saw that it had been put on one of the social media platforms. And once, when she saw that, the next day she was found dead at home. And so what the parents said, when one of the parents got interviewed, what they said was, as a result of this bullying, so they had issues with the school for not reporting the bully to the police and stuff. But you see that whatever went through this child's mind before she ended up thinking, or not even thinking, before she ended up taking her life, was something that we want to discuss on how we can help our children, right? How can we protect our kids? How can we help them prevent them from getting to that level? And even if they get to that level, how can we make our communication with them in a way that they can talk to us instead of taking their lives? If I could turn back the hands of time, one something that I say often, I wish I could whisper in that little girl's ear, like, hey, talk to somebody instead of taking your life away. So that is one of the things that inspired the topic of today. And we just want to talk about bringing up these kids that God has blessed us with. All right. We, at least if somebody listening here has a child, has a niece, has a nephew, or has some loved one that they look after or that they have a connection with, what are you doing? How do you think we can better the relationship we have with our kids with all this technology, as again we call the technological outburst? How can we control that? So that's what we want to talk about today and get your input. And before we go into the nitty-gritties of all of that, I would like for Ice to talk to us a little bit about the beginning of all this, right? How can we start this? And when I talk about how we can start this, I'm referring to how can we build a foundation on which these children will grow, and we just keep praying that they stay. And this is where, Ice, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to maybe talk some insights about who we are, about our identity, and how we can incorporate these values into our everyday lives so that our children understand where we come from and be able to just communicate. What do you have to share?
Oh, thank you for that. It's a sad story. Always have think about a 14-year-old taking their lives. It's crazy. It's not something that any parent or any community should even go through. And I think the most important part is about building that foundation. In as much as I totally accept that we all have external factors that also contribute, I feel that building a foundation, it's super important, starting from accepting your identity. And when I talk about accepting your identity, it can be cultural, it can be personal, it can be emotional, it can be physical. So being able to be like bringing up our kids and training them and building a foundation, telling them, hey, you are beautiful, you are physically beautiful, which is important. It is okay to be vulnerable. It is okay that sometimes some people are going to win and you're going to fail. It's okay to fail. And also not just by saying those, but physically and actually showing them. If I am open, the only way I can be vulnerable to somebody and open to somebody, it's when I know that they are open to me. I think my honesty, my uniqueness as a child came forth when mom is saying something, and that moment you see how she becomes emotional and even cries. I'm like, I just open up like a book. I just want to tell her my truth. I just want to communicate with her why I did what I did, because she actually showed me that you can be open. I, as your mom, I can be vulnerable. This is the person that I am. So for me, that is the identity, accepting these little things, training your kids and showing them, hey, and telling yourself, if I'm a woman, I'm a mom that is a little bit bigger, I will tell myself in front of my kid that I am a beautiful woman. No matter what anybody says out there, I am a beautiful woman. And if your child can recognize that, hey, my mom is a little bit bigger, but she knows she's beautiful, even if I'm bigger, I am also beautiful. It will be difficult once you've laid that foundation in them. Nobody else can tell them anything. In as much as we have that, the social media, Instagram bodies, all of these things are just external factors. Once you lay that foundation and say, hey, this is who you are, this is who you should accept. Look at yourself and say you are pretty, and look at yourself and say I am happy. There is this thing that I do right now, and it's weird. I get up in the morning struggling at 5 a.m. sometimes to get out of bed, and I'm tired, my body is broken, and I just shout to myself, it's gonna be a happy day. for me, that is how I start my day. And no matter what anybody does within the day, you cannot take that away from me because I have laid my foundation for that day. It's going to be a happy day. I have identified my day already. No matter what happens, my day has been identified as a beautiful day, and I'm going to keep it that way. Any other factors that are coming along, those are just distractions for me. So I feel like we should continue to do this, right? Given going down to areas where we find situations of violence and abuse in relationships, I feel in as much as it takes two to make that happen, but most women who have accepted they've been able to identify who they are, know their worth, their values. Sometimes they pick up those things from the start and they're like, this is not what I can deal with. I can't deal with it, step away from it. So I feel our kids can also pick that up if we show them and we say, hey, because you're African, it doesn't make you lesser to sit in a room of Americans. Because you're black, it doesn't take anything away from you. Because your accent is different, it doesn't take anything from you. You're supposed to be in that room because you're worth it. So I think that's the foundation. That's where I'm at for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Ice. I'm just seeing Vali's comment again. As I said, connecting with our children is the topic of today, but we're dissecting and going um into different parts of it. So Ice is just responding to the whole fact we're talking about a 14-year-old child who took away her life because she was bullied, and the video got put on social media. So that is what inspired the topic for today. And Ice was just talking about how we should work on building the foundation, letting our children know who they are, being assertive, and again being in acceptance. As you say, you do not have a gadget to write a topic down. It looks like when people join later, it will be a little bit difficult. So we just want to reiterate the topic as we go and just link it back to what we are talking about as you bring in your points. So I do agree with you on all what you've said. And as I say, when kids grow up, the way they look at how the way they are handling things probably depends on the way they see their parents at home handling these things, right? If there was a way, if this child could actually come out and say, hey, you know what? I wish I could talk to somebody. Maybe the child could not talk to someone. Maybe the child is not used to opening up and they cannot just stand that. So this got boils back down to the question, how much technology can we expose our children to? Right. I wanted us to discuss that because once I read this in the news and I was like, hey, this child had access to this social media platform and saw the video of her being beaten, being bullied, and that shattered her so much so that she felt like her whole life, her 14 years on earth was no longer important, right? How much um how can I call it? How much social media? Because I don't think it's just internet. It's more about the social media platforms. How much of this, again, if you are listening in the comments, what is your thought of it? What do you think about exposing our children to all the social media platforms that they have on their gadgets carried around now? This is something that the past years I have thought about it a lot. I have tried to control what I expose my own kids to, and it's not an easy thing, but it is something that we want to always call on parents to be on the alert, right? You want to be conscious before you give them those gadgets because it can get overwhelming. Sometimes you even give them these gadgets. You say, okay, my own child started asking me for a gadget when she was 8. She was like, hey, mommy, can I have a phone? When she was 8 years old. And I was like, no, you don't need a phone. I see you if I pick you up from school. If there is anything, the school will call me. So I gave her that justification of why she doesn't need a phone until she turned 12, right? So if you find yourself, I've spoken with parents who justified it and said, hey, they'll give their 8 or 7-year-old kids phones because they need to call them. They go out, maybe they go on the bus and there's something they need to call them. That is okay. But how much control do you have over these gadgets? You need to be able to go online and see how you can monitor your kid's phone. If you have a phone for a kid that they can call you and stuff, do they need all of those apps on the phone? Do they need to be on the, so those are some of the questions that I would like for us to just ponder upon. And in as much as I share my own thoughts and Ice will share her own thoughts, we are still looking forward to you to be able to share your thoughts. What do you think about all of this? You'll see a regular 10 to 12-year-old child today. They have Instagram on their phone, they have TikTok on their phone, they have YouTube, they have all of those things. These are places where they go and they, unfortunately, we cannot really control what they say. Sometimes when you download those things, they'll tell you that, hey, there is parental control. The parental control of these big tech companies is not enough for our children. That is my belief. It is not enough. So, as parents now, what do we do to get better? What do we do to help our kids, right? Because the truth is the big tech company will not do this for us. They are out to make their money. They will not do this for us. How can we control this? Is what we are talking about today. And maybe some tips, if you're listening and you have an idea, please do not hesitate to put it in the comments, because there is probably that one person, that one parent or auntie or uncle out here who will listen to you and will change things for their kid at home. Yes, Ice.
Yeah, in as much as I agree a lot with the control, which is something that will be uncontrollable in the nearest, or even impossible sometimes to control these days, because you still want to communicate with your kid, you want to give them these phones, and sometimes we can hardly even find phones that don't have the ability to do those things. I really strongly believe that there is something. I have one of my nephews who is super intelligent and an all A student. But then I always tell him, you have that part already. There's another part that I want you to have: compassion, empathy. I want you to look at the next person and feel like have empathy for them. Because I strongly believe that that is not the only way, but it's the most important way to avoid all of these things. Because in as much as that girl was bullied and she had to think about, oh, how many views this has been posted on Instagram, and now it has this many views. But if we continue to train our kids to be compassionate, maybe the bullies will not be able to even get to that level. And sometimes you need to train your kids to be tough. The world is cruel. Like, you need to train them to stand up for themselves as well. This might come out harsh, but I prefer my kids. I'll prefer my kid to stand up and fight and get a suspension than to be bullied. Sincerely, because you can't, it's a difficult world. You need to train them to stand up for themselves and speak up and fight and protect themselves when need be. Because nobody's going to do it for you. We get bullied at school at young ages. Even here in the corporate world, we are still bullied at work. In your marriages, you're bullied. So all of this bullying is happening everywhere. So at some point, we need to build that foundation to let people stand up for themselves, and also try to instill that values like compassion and empathy, all of these things in them. And just have them like, so one of my team members sent me a message this week and said, Elvira, you changed something. You gave me something in life that I don't know how I'll ever pay you back, because you were very empathetic and you showed everybody respect. And sometimes, backstory, to give you more context, I moved from that team to another team. So I used to be the team lead there. And she said, I don't know how I'm ever going to pay you back. So sometimes I just stand and I ask myself, what will Elvira do in this situation? Because people will come up to you ready to fight. All I do, I listen. I just listen, like talk. Once you can, these values are super important. Sometimes we are blindsided by, actually, let me control the phone. But you might just be focused on controlling the phone and missing the other part. So you want to create balance. You can't just focus on controlling the phone, controlling the apps, which at a certain point, those things will be uncontrollable with artificial intelligence. So do what you can, what artificial intelligence cannot change. instill
Let
the
me cut you short a little bit there because what you said, I know that you are not seeing comments, but it's like you just spoke your brother's mind. That is what Vali just said in the comments. He said trying to restrict social media access is a losing battle, right? Talking to the child is the key. Fostering a climate of communication is super important. So I cut you short there to read that out to you so you can hear, because that is exactly what you are saying. So being in control and doing all of that, yes, that will do its role, but you want to put them in a position where they can talk, where they can express themselves, because truth is, I tell you people every day that my daughter Haley doesn't have TikTok, but I bet you play a TikTok song here, she would dance to all of them. How does she find these things? She doesn't have the app. Yes, she goes to school, she meets with other children who have the app. So, me controlling her individual phone is not enough to protect her from whatever I want to protect her from that is out there. But being able to be open to her and say, hey, there are things that are inappropriate out there. There are things that, and just making her understand that value, the different values. I think from what I get from what you've said so far and what Valia has written there, that is the message. Did I interpret that right?
Yes, and to add to what, just the last point before you continue, one other thing that we need to train our kids to do is to stand up for the weak. Stand up for the weak. If you're in a scenario where you see another kid that is being bullied, you stand up for that kid and protect them. Show others compassion. Not it's you must not stand up for yourself because you are in the fight. No, you got to learn how to stand up for others. If you see something wrong happening in the society and you have the powers to prevent that from happening, you stand up and make it happen and protect the vulnerable person in that situation. So we need to continue to train them also to be able to stand up for others and protect all the weak, vulnerable people in our society.
Which is good. Thank you again. Those days, those early days, I remember when our own little ones, Chris and Haley, she used to say, "Oh, mommy, I said something because they were being bullied." Because I will say yes. When my baby was younger, she could stand for herself. You will not bully her. People would talk about her hair in school, and she was like, "Hey, I have kinky hair and I'm beautiful." But as I grow up, things are changing. That's why I want to continuously keep tack on that. Let me take the next comment from Vali, and again, I bet you have something to say here. He says, also, as a parent, you should be able to tell when something is not right with the child. While we train and expect children to express themselves, we as parents should have time to understand our children. That time to understand the children. Value, something that you've hit on there is, I can bet you that there are a ton of people out here who are not able, and again, whatever reason they will give you, that don't really get to spend that time with their children. And I bet that is where there is a gap. That is where they miss out. Because just one quick comment, I remember I talking to a mom. She's an older woman today, she has older, and she said one thing that she has learned in her life is that she stayed with her daughter at home, and her daughter was pregnant all the way to 7 months, and she never knew. Till date, she regrets those months that she failed to notice the differences in her child, and she blames herself for not being vigilant. That's just an example, and it came to my head because it's not been too long we talked about that. And so this is also what Vali just said there about being able to know your kids in a way that if something changes, you'll be able to catch it, even if they don't want to talk about it. I think if you see those differences, it might make them open up. Yeah, Ice, what do you think about that?
I think that's very correct. And something that I feel we should do, I don't have kids biological, but I think I'm in a position where I protect and I take care of a lot of kids in my family. And I also continue to discipline them, not the favorite auntie, which I don't care about it. Um, I think one thing that we can also do, which I just thought about, and it's something that it's telling them about our weaknesses, having those conversations with them and say, hey, today I had these. For example, today somebody told me that I speak differently because my accent, I'm African. just bringing that, having that conversation with one of my nieces or nephews, like it's a good thing for me to go and say, hey, at work today, this happened, and you know what? I feel like the person that feels like my accent is different doesn't get it, because guess what? Their accent is also different. So bringing those stories to them and being vulnerable with them and telling them that, hey, this this is what happened. I don't care about it because I know I'm unique. That's my uniqueness is special. It is only the only way heads are going to turn in of say we are 10 in a room, what 9 Americans and one black. Heads are going to turn only when the African speaks. Everybody want to turn around and see who is speaking. So
We, you're different.
you have that different is an advantage. So make use of it and take that advantage and shine with it. So we need to have these conversations with our kids. Tell them the different difficulties that we face every day. We need to tell them. I think that is going to help them to be able to communicate better, to bring those stories from school and say, hey, mom, dad, this auntie, this is what happened, and this is how did you handle it? This is how I handled it. And you even ask their own perspective and say, hey, how do you think I can handle such a situation?
Yep.
I feel, in as much as I'm not saying that's what I am doing now, but that's something that we should strive to do. I think it's going to change the entire game. I don't know. It's going to change
It
everything.
does, eyes. It definitely does. And again, the next comment that we have from Valley is like, do not underestimate the ability of children to understand. And just to tie that comment back to what you said, the whole idea of being vulnerable, right? Being able to talk to them. I had an experience at work once that it made me sweat. You know, the nervous sweat, right? I called all your phones, almost all my siblings. I called everyone, and nobody was available to talk at that time. And at that moment, Haley got home. And so you know how we do screen shares at home. It's common now with the remote working, we do a screen share. So I'm talking with the client, and unexpectedly, I forget that I have shared my whole screen. Normally, I will share a tab or a particular window. But this day, I don't know what happened, and I shared my whole screen. And the client was saying something that did not tie with what we had spoken about before. And I wrote to my colleague that I was on the call with. So I opened our Slack, our communication software Slack, and I typed to my colleague. I was like, "Hey, how is this lady saying this? We did." So I said it, and the whole meeting could see that. I swear to you, my body, like, I don't know how I felt. Like, it was so uneasy. I could not walk the rest of the day. I was dying to talk to someone. Same moment, Haley got home, and I was like, "Oh God, you don't even know what your mother did." Right. So whenever she walks home, she comes to my desk, and if I don't stop her, she starts telling me about her day. I'm like, "Hey, I'm still working. Can we talk about your day at the end of my own day?" So she came this day, and she was surprised that I was just talking. I was like, "Oh, come and help your mom. Something has happened." So I explained to her what I had done. And then she was like, "Are you going to write to the what about?" I asked her, like, "What do you think if this were you?" Like, I don't feel good at all. So this is just tying back to the fact that sometimes we don't we underestimate their
Yeah.
ability to understand, right? But the insights that she gave me, like what she thought about the whole situation that I went through at work, I bet you that I was shocked. I was like, okay, I know that I share things with you, but this one, I did not expect it to be this reasonable. So this still ties back to that. Telling them some of our difficulties, sharing. She knows that I'm one person that I hold strong to my accent. So sometimes I'll say something and she'll be like, "Come on, mommy, what about you say it this way?" I'm like, if I say it that way that you want me to say it, you know how the kids easily adapt to all this accent thing than us adults. Or let me use myself as an example. It's hard for me to change my accent, right? So she's like, "Mommy, why don't you just say it this way?" I say, if I say it this way now, the next minute I'm going to switch back to my authenticity and it's not going to come out again. So she's
Okay.
like, "Okay." I'm like, "I can't fake it, child. I cannot." So she's like, "Okay." So those are conversations that I try to have with her. And just to repeat, I see Vali's next comment, which said, "Show them that people can be vulnerable and it is okay." So I showed this little girl how much I had messed up at work. And I saw how she consoled me, and she even proposed on how amend things, how I could fix things. She gave me ideas before I finally spoke with Charlene, and subsequently just to see how I could fix that situation, right? So I definitely agree with your thought on that, being vulnerable to our children, telling them what we face, some of the challenges we face at work. If you go to work and you have a difficult patient, right? This happens every day for the people who work in healthcare. You go to work and you have a difficult patient, or you have a difficult family member to a patient. You sometimes, when you come back home and you're just relaxing with your kids, share it with them. Tell them how you handled it. Ask them like, hey, what would you do if you were like, can you advise me? Like, what do you think? I believe that that helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Especially the thing, especially us being here in the West, we don't have the what we're missing, but which is hard to create that time is a story time. We take it. We don't really have allowance for the story time that you think of it back home, where you're just sitting around, maybe doing a
Mhm.
tour together with your parents, and they tell you stories. You all are telling. That was a those were moments of communication that and vulnerability and so many things that we did not know that was what was happening at those times. But then that is what we need to create time for here in the, especially for those that are out in the West. So
Yes, yes. Again, the luxury of time is not there a lot. I see another comment. Tell them the honest truth about their heritage and why they may be treated differently. It is a cruel world. So this ties back down to that whole accent thing, right? Like, this is who you are. There is nothing you can do about it. You just have to get used to it. Or sometimes when I say, hey, you know what? When I experience racist things, right? This is something that we see every day. We have just learned how to live with these things. It doesn't mean that these things don't exist. They exist, but we have learned how to live with them and kind of excel over these things, because we are not going to let those things put us down. And that's the same thing I tell the kids. I'm like, hey, whether you like it or not, you're different. Especially when they start coming to that level of understanding their differences in their skin tone, in their hair. I remember Chloe was talking once, and she was like, why somebody's hair is different from hers and stuff like that. But now she's just 6, but she understands why somebody's hair is different. That is because of how fast they are learning these things. At the same time, the moment you start understanding that they are talking about things that you probably will not expect your 6-year-old to know at this moment, you just want to quickly educate them on it. Because if you don't prepare them to understand their heritage and all of those things, other people would do it. And the way other people are going to teach your children about your heritage and all of that is probably not the way you are going to do it. And that might just mar the whole situation for you.
yeah,
So I agree with that as well. Then we have Ari Packer, Toots, we see you. And she says, parental guide is very important when you have kids. I honestly have anxiety just thinking about the influence of social media, just like your sister Wills. Yes, eyes. Raising confidence in kids is important. My pikin go only the bully them bas. Period. Yes, I agree. Let them stand for themselves, right? Don't come back and cry to me and tell me that, oh, this person did this. You want them to be able to fight for themselves, stand for themselves, and talk out for themselves. I definitely agree with that as well. We do have another comment, and then I will give you a chance to talk on it. So Vali says, driving with my son, other drivers break the rules, but I don't. And you see, learning by example, they see these things, right? When my son asks why I do not do the same, I tell him that the others can get a break if caught, right? I would hardly get one. Okay, so you see, they do crazy things on the road, and that's something driving. We fail to understand how vigilant these
yeah,
people are when we are driving with them. They
yeah.
pay attention, they see everything. And that is in his case, his son will ask him why he doesn't just do the same thing that they are doing, like him. And he's like, no, those guys will get a break if they do that. But if I do it, they will not treat it the same way as they. So just draw the line. Let them know that they always have to try to be on the right side. Make an effort. Do not do it because other people are doing it, because there is no guarantee that you people will be treated the same. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree with that one, Vali. Thank you so much for your input. I see another comment from Geraldine. It says, I hammer the race thing in them constantly. And I let them know that being a black, okay, let him know for his son, being a black boy in America is tough.
Mhm.
Everybody, I remember my friend Estelle, when she used to say the same thing. Oh my God, Solange, bringing up my son in this country, one thing I do is instill in him that being a black child, a black boy child in America is tough. And so I know she started educating Stephen, talking to him about all this race thing since when Stephen was like 7. Like he's 10 today, 6, 7. She already started. And that's the same thing that Geraldine says she does. Because if you don't teach them, someone else is going to teach them these things. And you don't want them to teach them what you don't want them to
Yeah.
know. So I think that that's a good idea. Thank you for sharing, Mamulo. Yes,
Yeah. Yes, just to add to what all the comments and telling our kids how we're different, I want us to also hammer on the fact that being a black boy in America can be a very good thing as well. You being a black man who excels, a black man who is compassionate, a black man who is successful, a black man who is empathetic, good, makes you a shining star amongst, like you're the diamond amongst rocks. Because we should, in as much as we want to tell them how they're going to be treated because they're black, we want to also instill in them how they're going to shine if they bring out these good qualities, how they're going to stand out, how they're going to, it's going to be an advantage for them if they are good citizens in the world. Like we cannot forget that part as well. It's very important to tell our kids that your difference is a win, can be a win for you, can be an advantage for you. So take that part and run with it and just continue to be good, because sometimes we might forget and just say, hey, the world is against you, for example, which is harsh. The world is against you, you have to fight it. But then the world can be for you because you are
of
this.
course.
Yeah. So that part should not be, we should not dilute that part in the midst of trying to set them in a real cruel world. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so tell them the reality. Tell them the reality is not the end. We also let them know how to take advantage of the situation, right?
Yeah.
There are holes that you can fill and
Yeah.
excel. You get
Yeah.
it? And so the way this all ties down to the how do we prevent them from ever thinking of taking their lives, right? That is something that, yes, it happens all over the world, but the ease at which it happens in the West is a little bit troublesome. The ease, I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in other parts, in other continents, a part of North America. Yes, it does. But the ease at which it happens is here. It's a little bit worrisome. And this will still boil down. So I'm just trying to tie all what we've said about what having communication with our children, and that communication, that ability to talk to them, that ability to create a space where they can talk to you, I bet will really, really help in reducing the risk of suicide. It will reduce the risk of them ever thinking that this life is worthless, right?
Yeah.
So all of this boils down to those two things. There is something I was going to talk about, but based on the comments you and Vali brought, I'm like, okay, you know what? It's not only about the control. It's not only about being able to say, hey, what does my kid have access to? What social media is my kid on? Hey, how long did my kid spend on this app? Because as you say, chat GPT is come, artificial intelligence is there. All of these things are going to take over by the time we blink our eyes. And by the time you know it, they know all of those things. It's not about taking the gadgets from them. It's about teaching them how to use these things, teaching them how to differentiate between what is good for them and what is bad for them, teaching them to be able to sift through all what is put out there and just pay attention to the things that are of value to them, because like it or not, there's always going to be evil, there's always going to be wrong, there's always going to be bad people out there. But it's just that ability now to incorporate, like put in them that ability to be able to sift through these things and talk and communication. I don't know how I can read, how I can hammer on this whole communication thing, but communication is really the key. We need to get better at connecting and communicating with our children, especially with this emergence of social media and all the internet of things. We don't, let's not lose that human connection, because the world is going to take over it for us. I see another comment from Valley. Know your child. It is not an easy task. Time is a scarce resource. However, if you consider your child's welfare important, you will make the time. Yeah, I don't talk a lot about the time thing because I know that I always do, but my schedule is not like another person's schedule. I always want to leave it open, just as Vali says, encourage people to make the time, right? One thing I have for sure in my life today is the luxury of that time to spend with my kid. I do know, I appreciate that I have that, but some people do not have that. And that is what you hear Vali calling out to, like, hey, this is important. You want to be able to make that time, create time for those little people. Otherwise, we'll regret it. Actually wanted to throw a little bit of light on your thoughts about creating. Again, we'll be rounding up the show soon, but just throw a little bit on light on, for people who are struggling to create that time to spend with their kids. People who yes, a lot of people struggle with that. I've talked to people who are like, oh my God, I really want to do this, but I don't have the time. And I don't like to judge people on their time, but I always say, out of 24 hours, how come you don't have an hour a day to spend with your kids? But that just depends on what they are doing. What's your intake? What input do you have on that, please?
Um, for me, without being not being judgmental or anything, if you don't create the time to be with the kid today to train them, you're gonna create that time to cry with them, to mourn, to do something. Like you're gonna have the after effect. You're gonna create time for the after effect once it has happened. So if you don't create time today to train them, you're going to create time, God forbid, to visit them in jail. You're going to create time to cry with them, to take them to therapy, to take them to counseling. You're going to create time to do those other things. So it's personal. What is important to you? Is it making all the money and just living a good, comfortable life, or making extra income and you lose your child? What is important to you? It's about the values for you. It's personal. It's something that you have to think about. Like, what is more important to me? Is it about going out there and working? And I know it's not the same for everybody, but then sometimes you can give up a shift and just eat something average and don't get those pair of new shoes and do something and not and just have time with your kids. It's hard. I know people will be out there like you're saying because you don't know, but then think about it. What is going to happen if that child really gets into trouble? You're going to create that time.
I think I want to end the show.
You're going to create that time. So in as much as we do this, they are great kids. I know it's a topic that put parenting, the parents are scared, they're nervous, it's scary.
It is scary. You see, I could not even really talk about it, right? Because it is scary. It is hard.
It is hard, but at the end of the day, you know what? God got us. Our belief system, whatever you believe in, trust that God, God cannot, so they say God cannot give you when God gives you changing situation, he gives you the grace to also handle that. We also have to train our kids to be God-fearing, because once we instill the faith in them, it's hard for them to sway the other way. So Let's continue to pray and continue to bring up our kids. Even though we are in the States, we're in the US, it takes a village to raise up a child. If you see another person's child in a wrong position, just talk to them and don't go to them like you're trying to discipline. Just, even if you just know, give them that look like you know this is not right. There is that look like not correct. Acknowledge that you've seen them. Just by that, even a child is going to retract if you acknowledge that, hey, I see what you're doing, and give them that look. Do something. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, I see the Mamulu says easier said than done. Agreed. There is no way I can even disagree. Yes, we talk about it, but it is tough. But what do we want to do, right? There are many more situations in life that are really tough, but you have to get through it and you have to work with them. So it's just like saying that, hey, you know what? I have to keep this job. My boss is a tough nut to crack, right? This person is mean to me. This person makes me look like, but you need that money to pay your bills. You want to be able to look at something like this in the same light. Like, you know what? If I'm not able to create time to be with this kid, if I'm not able to create time to talk with this child, and just listen to them. Create that story time, as ICE calls it, so that they can express themselves, talk to you about what happened in school. When I drive, just on our way from church today to home, back home, this little madam was telling me about what happened. She told me about 3 different stories about what happened in school. These are things that the school doesn't call. If your child is not directly involved, they will not call you to tell you, right? But so I always tell her that, hey, you are my ears in that school. Whatever happens in school, whether it concerns you or not, so long as it's something that raises your eyebrow, share with me. So that is what she does. She'll tell those stories. When you're driving, when you're eating, don't talk while you eat. But if you have to talk at that time, let them talk. So it's important, however the case, to create that time and talk with these children. If we do that, I bet you that they will not get to the stage where this little 14-year-old child got to. I just think that we have to make it work. We have to.
Yeah, I know when we talk about creating time, people always feel like you have to say these 4 hours is the time that I have to create with my kid. That's not what we're talking about. It's about not. When I talk about creating time, I feel like it's about you can create time while doing something, but then give that listening ear to that child. Sometimes kids come up to us and like, I want to tell you, I will just dismiss them. I'm tired. We just dismiss
I've
them.
done that. I'm guilty of that.
Tired, and you just dismiss them. Sometimes we catch ourselves and like, but what does she want to say? Then you call them back. I'm like, come back. We don't give them the space to even talk. So I know people will say you say because you're not there, but then it's
no. I am there, right? I am there. I am accepting that it's challenging, but also still making that effort, right? Does it mean that it is completely protected, covered, and sealed? No. But I have that feeling that I make an effort. I try. And I don't just shut it down completely. As I say, sometimes it could be any time of the day. It could be when we're driving to church, just a 15 minutes drive. We're still able to just make that time. Instead of listening to the radio, I love K1. I love the K-Love radio. But I'll turn off the radio and like, hey, let's talk and have that opportunity to... And Mamulu says, Auntie Icy, I want to tell you something in Adria's voice.
All the time.
Then you kick her out. You kick her out, like leave me alone, I'm busy. When she really wants to tell you something.
You kick her out and you're like, I'm busy. But sometimes I'm like, now I listen, I'm like, come on, tell me something. I listen to her and she talks to me. Tell me what happened. Show me your new moves in your Taekwondo class or whatever they call it.
Taekwondo, yeah.
Yeah, you talk to them and it's...
Yeah. So Tuti says, finding the balance between your professional life and being a parent. Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Ari. And I see Valio. So when talking about time, it is an hour maximum a day, which is true, right? An hour, it's again, sometimes when you go back to your phone, look at your browsing time for that day.
Oh,
just your browsing time.
YouTube videos, TikTok, Instagram, all of you. You take about 2 hours to do those things, but then if you're like, if I was talking to, and sometimes even talk to your siblings, like talk to your friends. Your friends are going through a lot. If you have time, talk to these the people around you. People are go through tough times, and you don't even recognize that, hey, maybe my sister is going through a difficult time, my friend is going through a difficult time. It's not just about kids, your friends. Take time to talk, to reach out to people, and just be good to people.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been really interactive. We appreciate you all so much. So Mamulu says, yes, I do a lot of talking in the car. I do too. So that is also a good one where you know that you have their attention, their
Yeah.
focus. Sometimes in the house, they are looking at different places. But I think that the car has been a good one for me too. I talk a lot. I do a lot of talking and listening in the car as well. Just let them whine on a drive, talk about whatever they want to talk about, and it's good. And Sandrine says, let them read. Okay, so parents should reduce 50% of the time they spend on social media to actively engage with their kids. Yes, if that eyes, that sounds like Congos. Valley fly. That's your brother. Yes. So, and your sister says we should all reach out to her because she has issues. Yeah, I hope that it's not because you need money. That's Mamulu. Yeah, so this has been really, really, really good. Again, I thank you all so much. You see, this is a house of chatting. Thank you so much, Famil. Thank you for so much, HOC, for participating and for helping us put this information out there. Thank you, Ari. Thank you to everybody who was able to join and contribute. Again, we hope that this will make an impact. We hope that this will help somebody who comes across this video and listens to it and will actually be a call to action to like, hey, how can we avoid instances where our kids will get involved in something that will even lead them to even thinking that their life is not valuable. And we have all agreed that one of the best ways to do this is communicating with our children, communicating, connecting with our kids, creating the time to talk to them and to listen to them. Share our experiences with them, be vulnerable with them, and let them understand that even as adults, as their parents, we also are having challenging days. And that will also help them talk to us, their parents, about their own challenging days. And when we share, as I say, sharing is what? There is something, sharing is something, right? Sharing is caring, so they'll know that there is somebody that cares about them. And had it been this little girl came back home, when she saw the video online, she shared it with her parents, I bet you that her parents would have been able to talk her out of taking her life. So we pray that this never happens to anybody out there. It is not a beautiful, it is not even something I want to think about as a parent, talk less of a child that has to deal with it. So thank you again. Yes, Valley, you need to go and talk to Benti. Very important. He needs you right now. So we appreciate you all so much, and you have an amazing week. Eyes, closing words.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. It's always a pleasure to have you. Appreciate every comment, like and share. Continue to like and share the video, and continue to stand up for others and train your kids to stand up for others, even if they are not the one in the vulnerable situation. So train them to take care of others by standing up for them. Have a wonderful week. Until then, bless Sunday. Bye bye.
Thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.